everyone, and welcome back to another webinar with us here at VanillaSoft. We're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you all for joining us today and being here. Really excited to spotlight Emory University's Digital Engagement Center today. And I'm really excited to be introducing our guest with us momentarily. We're going to get into a jam-packed session that we've got for everyone today. So if you see here on the screen, next slide, looking at here, we've got a couple of housekeeping items just to cover before we get going. If you've joined us in the past, none of this is new. So attendees, all of you are in listen-only mode. So this webinar is being recorded for future on-demand playback. So if you're here, your participation as an attendee or in the chat with us just represents that you acknowledge that we're recording and it could be viewed again in the future. This has also been pre-recorded for you, so Deja and I are joining you guys live in the chat today, so please feel free to drop us a line, interact with us. We'd love to be able to chat with all of you as we go through today. So moving on, getting kind of into the start of things here. So quick introductions. My name is Emily Etzkorn, and I'm a fundraising evangelist here at VanillaSoft. And if I've met some of you before or you're returning, welcome back. Great to have you. This is your first webinar with us, so glad to have you here. But more importantly, I'd like to introduce our guest and the star of our show today, Deja Walker from Emory University. So please join me in welcoming her. We're so glad to have her with us today. So Deja, thank you for being here with us. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to you and feel free to introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me, Emily. As stated, I am Deja Walker from Emory University, Senior Associate Director of Alumni and Constituent Giving, and I currently lead the Digital Engagement Center here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to get into a little bit more about some of your history with Emory, as well as background on the Digital Engagement Center. Like I said earlier, we've got a jam-packed session for you guys today, so we'll dig into more of your experience momentarily, Deja. So before we move off this slide, just want to touch on the QR codes that you all should see in front of you. If anyone wants to connect with Deja or myself, we would love to do so. So feel free to scan those QR codes and check out our LinkedIn. Connect with us. We would love to continue the conversation after today or answer any questions. And I'm sure Deja has plenty of experience that she's, able to share as well. So getting into things, you can see we've got just a quick agenda up on the screen here now. So we're going to dive into some background on Emory's Digital Engagement Center. We'll talk to Deja and hear about some secrets of success that she's got to share, whether we're talking about some of the multi-channel touchpoint strategies that she's employed to helping students be successful in their role. And then we're also going to save some time at the end to talk specifically about credit cards. So Emory and Deja herself have done a lot of work working on credit card donations specifically inside the Digital Engagement Center and navigating a couple of hurdles in that area as well. So we'll make sure that we save some time to touch on that. So with that, Deja, we can go ahead and jump into the first bit of our conversation today. And let's just talk about the background of the Digital Engagement Center. I know in the past you've mentioned to me that you came into the program around the time that you were getting ready to shift from a telefund to the Digital Engagement Center. So anything that we want to share about that, talking about maybe some of the mission of Emory as well. And I will turn it over to you to see where we want to go from there.
Yes, so the former telefund program at Emory, one that was similar to many other higher education call centers or fundraising programs, was converted into a digital engagement center, or what we call here a DEC, in the fall of 2021. And the transformation occurred to ensure constituents receive individualized communications from the university regarding advancement efforts extending beyond solicitation. And this was done to make sure that, we don't just reach out for solicitation. We're able to connect with our supporters and our donors on different content areas.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think everything that you guys have done and are currently doing are very much what's going on with so many programs throughout the country. and throughout other programs as well outside just the United States. So I think a lot of people that are hopefully joining us are able to relate to that. And I think there's a lot of different directions that you can go when trying to make that move. So lots that we want to get into there and hear about some of maybe the motivating factors and talking about some of the goals and strategies. But maybe just taking a step back, give us an overview on the operations of the room in general. So I would love to hear kind of what the makeup of your room looks like. How many students do you have working for you? How often are you holding shift? Do you have student leadership that helps you out? Talk even just a bit about your role and maybe what some of your day-to-day looks like so we can get a feel for what the operations look like in your room.
Yes. Great question. So the Digital Engagement Center here at Emory, we call Sunday through Thursday evenings for the fall, spring, and summer semesters. And we are currently operating with more than 50 student employees. And we also provide multiple advancement opportunities for students within the program as well. This year, we established 2 new roles to expand the program. And we have student leadership caller roles, which allow some of our top performing agents an opportunity to manage their own group of prospects and be more hands-on in the donor cycle. We have seen this to be beneficial in ensuring that we can engage with those donors that are in between the annual giving and major gift levels. And we have seen some success in donor renewals and retention since outreach began last fall of 2022. And then we've also added a student fellow role in which we have an individual that manages many of the day-to-day operations, like managing the shift on the floor during calling. And they also get an in-depth introduction to the field of advancement. And instituting this role has allowed this current student to just gain more insight into advancement, seeing as though that they consider a role after graduation for future employment and advancement. And since we implemented or transformed to the DEC, we began with just 2 student management roles, but we've expanded that as well to now we have a management team of 6 total because of the increase in callers. When I began in 2022, we only had about, I would say, less than 20 callers. So to see the increase from 20 to 50 has been great. And that the fact that we're able to get a lot of these students and have them connect and engage with our Emory University supporters.
Yeah, that's huge growth. That's fantastic. Obviously, the more students you have working with you, the more different touch points you're going to be able to accomplish. You can just get through more work and more constituent records in a shorter amount of time. So looking forward to hearing more about how you're maximizing the number of students that you have and the outreach that you can do. So I've got a lot of questions for you now, so I'm going to have to pace myself to make sure that we are able to touch on all of them. But going back even a little bit further, I would love to hear some more about your history working in this space. So how did you end up in this role? What drew you into this role? And what are you seeing just in the growth that you're describing? What are you seeing in terms of other opportunities for you to continue to help grow this program? I mean, you've already done a lot in a relatively short amount of time, increasing the number of students and different types of outreach, but I'd imagine you probably have more plans to go in front of you. So tell me a little bit about where you're at and some of your background with this role as well.
Yes. So I began my career in advancement as a telephone caller here at Emory. Awesome. And since then, I stayed in advancement and I've held many roles with administration. And then before coming into this DEC director role, I was one of the initial donor experience officers that we have here, which was an opportunity for me to gain more insight into frontline fundraising and donor outreach and finding ways to enhance the donor experience. So I would say my experience from being a telephone caller, having that experience as a donor experience officer, and even administration or operations in the background has been very beneficial to helping me manage the DEC here at Emory. I can say that even then, as a caller, we received feedback from several of our constituents that, as stated before, we only contacted them for solicitation. So when we made the change from the telephone to the DEC model, we understood that we needed to improve the donor experience by revising our approach. And the fact that I came from a donor experience program, I would say that those tools I'm able to implement and transfer over to leading the Digital Engagement Center, and also help our students expand their knowledge as well, which will help them in calls and, as a telephone caller or donor experience agent, or even a DEC worker. Having those transferable skills will be very beneficial.
Yeah, no, fantastic. You said a couple things that I think are really going to resonate with a lot of people. So one being that the specific experience you have is, I think it's a niche role to be in, right? Working in these engagement centers and continuing to work with college students, you really grow a lot of really specific skills and knowledge, and it's not something that everybody is cut out for. So having that experience being the student caller and then continuing to move up into other roles like you have is not an experience that everyone has. And I think you're all the better off in the role that you're currently in because you have that experience. And so I think there are other people out there like that, and they can probably relate as well. So love to hear that just in general. But the second thing that I think really resonated with me, at least, is what you said about all of these different roles that you have that you're helping to grow students into to help set them up for roles beyond just the student caller, and not just the student caller role. That's not to devalue the role that the students are in, but we aren't hiring students just to do some phone calls and then leave at the end of shift, leave at the end of, their graduation year and be done with it. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, for people to do exactly what you've done, work in a few different areas and gain a lot of knowledge about a lot of institutions, or remain with one institution and gain a lot of that institutional knowledge at that specific school. So I really love that that's a focus that you guys have, helping to grow the students into even professional roles. I think that's a really important aspect. And I really like that. So I hope that's something that you're continuing, to work on as you continue to grow your program. Something else that you mentioned that I would love to hear more about is just talking about some of those tools that you added as you made that shift from the telefund, more traditional kind of call center setup, to the Digital Engagement Center. I'd love to hear kind of where you started, and I think that'll probably take us into the next big thing that we wanted to hit on today, just talking about multi-channel outreach. But, you had mentioned you were focusing on just solicitations previously. And so by introducing this concept of the Digital Engagement Center, there's a lot of directions that can go, and there's a lot of different things that can mean. So where did you start when you guys first made that change from the telefund to the Digital Engagement Center? What was the first step in that? What was the first thing that you tried to introduce, and why did you choose that? And then I guess also start to talk about which directions you grew with that.
Yes, that's a great question. So we initially started to expand our outreach beyond solicitation to assist our engagement or regional engagement team with outreach for events that they were having in the area. Emory University recently launched a public campaign in which we had a lot of events going on across the country and even outside of the country as well. So by utilizing the Digital Engagement Center, we were able to not only reach out to those constituents that would typically attend those events in those areas, but also those that don't have many outreach or touch points from Emory University. And we were able to, again, personalize and make sure that they were able to engage with an actual, a current student or someone current at the university, and get them to possibly attend those events. And we integrated a multi-channel approach using digital touch points such as email and text messaging, in addition to phone as well. And we discovered that everyone doesn't respond to the same mode of outreach. And I would say we, since the beginning or the inception of the Digital Engagement Center here at Emory, VanillaSoft has been our CRM for the entirety of the program since we initially launched it. And we've utilized different other vendors for email and text messaging, but now in starting fall 2022, we utilize VanillaSoft's features for all of those touch points currently.
Awesome. And we love to hear it, obviously. Really glad to hear about all the success that you have just in general, but even more so when you're able to utilize all the functionality that you've got in one software package. It's a really efficient way to continue to move through your records. So love to hear that, obviously. And you set me up so well to move into our next topic. So thank you for that. But moving on to our multi-channel touch points, kind of really the meat of what we were talking about just as we were getting ready for this conversation today. And you've already alluded to a lot of this, so I'll let you choose where you want to start. But starting with the emails and the texting and continuing to incorporate it all into VanillaSoft and under that same umbrella there, would love to dig into everything surrounding the multi-channel outreach. So what other kinds of communications are you doing? If we're moving, further than just solicitations, what are we talking here in terms of non-solicitations? Are we doing stewardship kind of campaigns? Are we updating information? Would love to hear all about that. And in general, would love to hear about your strategy and your priorities with this new approach as well. So I'm sure we could spend another hour talking about multi-channel outreach and all of the ways that you're using it or envisioning to use it. But like I said, I'll turn it over to you and you can choose where you want to start first from there.
Yes. So with Steward, we do utilize our student callers or student agents for stewardship in our multi-channel approach, in addition to solicitation and engagement for event invitations as well. And we also utilize a cadence structure that we've implemented by that multi-channel approach. For instance, at the end of fall 2022, we reached out to LiveLink donors that typically give either toward the end of the calendar year or beginning of the calendar year. And we initially tried to contact them by phone, but if they were unreachable there, we followed up with emails and text messaging if we were able to. And by doing this, we saw an increase in donor retention. Through the DUC, we had a special link that we were able to track those gifts coming in. And we were able to see that they were responding in a way that, they might necessarily not respond via phone. So if they receive the link via text messaging or email, they were able to do it on their own time.
Fantastic. So many good things there. One of the things that you said a couple minutes ago, actually, like I said, you're saying so many good things. I can only keep track of so much in my head at once. But one of the things that I loved that you said was noticing some of those patterns and trends. You're totally right. Not everybody is going to want a phone call or an email or a text message. But when you're doing this kind of multi-channel outreach, multi-channel strategy, you're able to pick up on that, I think, a lot faster. You're able to conduct a bunch of different testing. And if you've got two populations, you can try one with a text and one with an email and see which one performs better, and then come up with the next test to see what's going to be even that much more impactful. So I think you're doing so many things correctly there in terms of figuring out who wants what and listening to those preferences, because that's, kind of what we're all about, right? Of course, we're here to fundraise and support the university, but we can't do that without the support of our donors. And so we do need to be donor-centric in all of the work that we're doing. And if we can't listen to the preferences that they're telling us, nothing else is going to follow very well. So I think that's a fantastic place to start, and just keeping in mind that everybody is going to behave differently, and you do have to be flexible and adaptable in what you're approaching each kind of population or segmentation with. I also really like all of the just different kinds of outreach that you're doing. There's similarly, there's not going to be a one size fits all type of communication for everybody either. And so depending on which populations you're speaking with, they might prefer that thank you via a text message, but you might find it's more impactful in the long run to retain them as a donor if you do a video message, for example. So just really, really fantastic to hear that you're taking advantage of all of those features that you have available to you in VanillaSoft. Obviously big fan of the fact that you're able to use all of those features, but even more so that you're seeing that impact and kind of the return on your investment with that too. If you're able to see the donors come back each year and you're able to see the numbers grow, those are all of the ideal outcomes that we want to see. So in terms of your priorities, I'm sure donor retention is a big one. In general, I'm sure you have a monetary goal as well. But is there anything else that you're focusing on, whether it's a full range of populations or segments that you're looking at, or even just focusing on something like recent alum or something? Are you focusing on acquisition of any kind? Are you focusing on increasing, giving so people are, renewing at a higher level each year? Anything like that, and how VanillaSoft is helping you do that as well?
Yes, great question. So our focus this year is more so with donor retention and donor acquisition.
Awesome.
We've seen a slight decrease in our millennial population. So that's our goal, to make sure that we can get those donors back with giving back to Emory University. And I would say that would be our main goal as far as DEC outreach. But we've also wanted to make sure that we do, again, improve the donor experience and be more donor centric. So making sure that we do reach out to donors if they do make their gifts and give them immediate thank yous, typically within the week afterwards, their gift, and also focus more on just reaching out to do check-ins with recent graduates, or making sure that, they have landed careers of their choices, and seeing if we can provide resources for them as well, and making sure that we reach out to parents of students, current students at the university, to ensure that they know about what's going on campus, because they may not be able to hear it from their student that's attending here. They just hear about, those personal experiences that the student has. But, what is Emory doing? What research is new here at Emory? How basically are we making sure that their child's degree is going to be, valuable to them in the future or upon graduation?
Definitely. Yeah. Parents are always a hard one to approach. So I think they always require a little bit of extra care, and a little bit of extra time, and maybe some trial and error. So all good things. Yeah, for sure there. Also what you said about the millennial population, I'm sure you're not the only one that's seeing some of that as well. And I also had the recent realization that millennials probably aren't considered young alumni anymore, which is horrifying given that I'm a millennial and no longer a young alum. So I don't love that on a personal note, but like I said, I'm sure you're not the only one that's seeing that. And that's hard, right? We have no idea what, the next round of recent grads are going to look like, or how the next generation of young alumni, how they're going to behave. And so it's kind of a guessing game sometimes. But the fact that you're staying on top of it and you're noticing these trends, and then, okay, well, that's our focus. We need to get them back on board, or maybe we need to try something new. Just again, that ability to be flexible, and to use a phrase that was overly used the past couple of years, to be able to pivot, I think is important too, just in your approach to, issues that you see that come up with certain populations. We could probably stay on this topic, I'm sure, for the rest of our time, but I have a couple of specific questions that I want to make sure that we touch on so that our audience can hear kind of from the horse's mouth. I would love to hear anything that you have to share about helping your students be successful. So whether that's helping to introduce your students to this type of multi-channel outreach, what did you do for them to help them learn or adjust to the new strategy, or even just in general, get them comfortable with the change. I think so often it's challenging to teach students, we're using this platform and now we're using this platform, or we were doing it this way, now our messaging is this. And I think it can be hard to get student employees on board with that because it is just a part-time job. They have a lot of other things going on. So what have you done to help your students succeed throughout these changes?
Yes. So at the beginning of each semester, we hold large training sessions for returning callers. And those that are coming back, we make sure that they can review the script that we do have and highlight any changes that we've made. Again, going back to that word pivot, making sure that they understand that it's like how we're having right now, a conversation, and just making sure that, it's not necessarily a script, but it's a guide, making sure that they just hit all the touch points. Consider it basically like a checklist in that case. And to make sure or to assist with their multi-channel approach, we definitely utilize VanillaSoft's ability with templates and having those templates for emails and text messaging available. And we also have templates when we do stewardship as well. And they are writing handwritten letters to our donors. So just making sure that they have those templates or those guides there. I always tell them, make it your own. This is your chance to ask the questions that you want to know the answers to, and connect to these donors, connect to these people at Emory University. I tell them that anything that I do give you as far as a template or a guide, this is just to help you out if you get stopped. You can always pivot and change and make it your own. But I can say it's definitely been beneficial to those that are newer callers that are just starting off. So they weren't at the larger training sessions that we do have. They may have been like at smaller individualized or smaller group trainings, and just having the ability to, when they go through training, show them all of the ways that they can connect with the donor or connect with the constituent through email and text messaging and other software or features that we use with VanillaSoft.
Awesome. Yeah, I think supporting your students and letting them know that they have a lot of resources at their fingertips and you're here to answer questions and I think all of that's great. And I think something else that's really important is letting them know that they don't have to be perfect on, rounds 1 through 3 of their phone calls. There is a learning curve with this job, and giving them that ability to kind of learn as they go, I think sets you up for much more long-term success. So they feel like it is okay if they, make a small mistake or something. Everyone's human. It's gonna happen. So very glad to hear that you're providing all those resources. My last big question kind of for this area of our conversation today is really just speaking to making this change from your standpoint. So is there any lessons learned that you would pass along to anybody that's in the process of changing up their approach in their engagement center, or any advice that you would share?
I would definitely share that when you are doing outreach, that when you're updating information, you do ask for those preferences, because if a donor lets you know that they only want to be contacted by phone and not text messaging or email, when you're changing your approach or shifting from a telefund or fundraising call center to a digital engagement center, you want to make sure that you're not upsetting those donors. Because again, we've seen time and time again, if a donor is upset, that sort of hinders our ability to get them to, if not renew their gift, to get them on board with giving back to the organization. So just making sure you're listening to the donors and putting the donor's experience first in that sense. Definitely.
I think there's a lot to be said for relying on the tools that you have to make sure that you're catering to the donor's needs, basically. Obviously, always need to be donor-centric, as we talked about, but especially during times of change like that. So it's a fantastic point. Before we run out of time, I feel like we say this every time we do a webinar, but before we run out of time here, we want to make sure we hit on something that is very unique to what you guys have going on. And you shared some of this with me when we were getting ready for our conversation today, but I want to talk about credit cards. So moving to our last slide here, specifically thinking about some of the hurdles that you guys faced, I would love for you to just give an overview of the obstacles that you came up across and what you had to troubleshoot through, and then of course your ultimate solution. And then also would love to hear what that's looking like for you now and how your credit card giving looks now. But we definitely want to make sure we touch on that.
Yes. So I would say this is one of my favorite things to chat about. It's something that I'm proud of here from our student agents at the Digital Engagement Center. When I first joined the DEC, our tech team was working with the company that would ensure the program was PCI compliant and help with processing credit cards and making sure that we were able to keep donors' information safe. However, due to various reasons, we had to terminate the relationship and we were left with the task of finding another solution. Fortunately, VanillaSoft has a feature that allows our students to transfer from their VS Connect phone number to a landline phone. And we have now student supervisors in place at multiple stations across the call center, ready and available to process those credit cards. And by having the callers inform the donors that they will be transferred to, I would say, an individual in charge, we've seen an increase in credit card gifts, which I can assume to be because there's an increased sense of security on the donor's end and around this new process. And throughout the fall 22 semester, we were able to maintain a credit card rate of, on average, 55% across all of our calling pools, which I would say is an increase from fall of 2021 of about 10 to 11% on average.
That's enormous, Deja. I'm sure I can't be the only one hearing that and just being absolutely blown away. 10, 11% credit card rate is something where I think a lot of programs hang out around because it can be challenging, especially depending on, if somebody doesn't trust the system or whatever the concerns may be. But taking the increase aside, a 55% credit card rate is absolutely fantastic. Just knocking it out of the park. And then when you consider what kind of growth that is in just 1 year, comparing a fall semester to a fall semester, that is absolutely blown away. I'm so impressed. I also think you've done a really nice job of succinctly describing a very challenging problem. So I hope everybody listening to this can give you all of the credit that you're due. It is not easy to navigate PCI compliance issues. It's something that pops up for anybody that could be setting up a program. Everyone wants to make sure that the transactions we're processing are secure and, different rules and regulations you have to follow. And it's not an easy one to navigate. And you guys did an awesome job of finding a solution that works for you. And so fantastic that VanillaSoft was able to help facilitate that too. So you could go out and get those credit cards. Obviously, we all know in this world the importance of getting the gifts on the credit card, fulfilled dollars right in the door. Who can beat that? But all that to say is just not to undercut the accomplishment that is. You should rightfully be very proud of that, not only finding the solution, but seeing that kind of growth. That's absolutely unreal. And I know you just started calling this spring semester, but I have high hopes to hear at the end of your spring calling semester that you also have an incredibly high credit card rate as well. So that's absolutely absolutely fantastic. Do you have any goals around credit card rates? Other than just a rate, do you have a goal for credit card number of dollars or anything like that? Or are you just looking to get as many as possible on credit cards?
So we don't have a typical donor dollar goal. Our goal is to get 1,250 gifts through the Digital Engagement Center. Great. And last semester, we were able to secure close to 500. So we're a little over the way there, but we do have this semester a big day of giving that we typically get most of our gifts from in the spring semester. Awesome. And As far as credit card rate, again, staying with that 55%. If we can't, at least beat it, I would try to at least stay the same on our average.
Yeah, I mean, how great would it be if you came back in 3 months and you were like, yeah, no worries, we got 80% on credit cards this semester. I mean, could you imagine? If anyone can do it, I'm sure you could. But I look forward to hearing what that's going to be like at the end of the semester. When is your day of giving, out of curiosity?
Our day of giving this year is March 22nd and 23rd.
Coming up then. So
yes,
I imagine you guys are all ramping up. I'm sure you're not busy at all with that. I'm sure it's just another day, right? just another day in the calendar year. Well, wishing you all the best of luck with that. And again, hats off to you with that credit card rate. Just absolutely fantastic. So that pretty much brings us to the end of our time here today. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Deja, thank you so much for being here and for joining me. Our time has flown by again, not surprising, but really appreciate everything that you shared, just from even making the shift from the telefund to the Digital Engagement Center and talking about some of those specifics that you've been employing to help your students be successful and help your credit card rate go through the roof. All of that absolutely fantastic. And I hope everyone in the audience has been able to glean a lot of good ideas as well. The topic of, gathering ideas for your own programs, you should be able to see on the screen that our QR codes are up again. So again, please feel free to connect with us. Deja clearly has a lot of fantastic experience and great ideas that I'm sure she can share with anyone that might want to have a further conversation. And I'm always super happy to have a conversation with anybody that is looking for another voice in the mix or, another shoulder to lean on when you need a little bit of support in your program. So happy to have the conversation. Reach out anytime. And Deja, thank you so much and have a great rest of the spring semester. To everyone else here in the audience, thank you for being here. Thank you for chatting with us. And be sure to keep an eye out for our next upcoming webinar talking more about digital engagement. You'll be seeing that come out in April. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.